Hi, this is Min Shan, and we've been bringing you quite a few Chinese guns the last month or two. I have another one here that a friend just let me borrow for a video. This is the very first Chinese semi-auto to come into the United States, and really the first Chinese AK to come into the US legally. All the ones that came in before this were ones that soldiers liberated during their time in Vietnam. Now, some of these were put on the registry in 1968 during the amnesty, but these would all have been full autos at one time. This is a Clayco Sports out of Kansas, Clay County. AKs. And this is essentially a Norinco export brand, as Norinco is honestly a conglomeration of different factories controlled by the Chinese government. These were produced at the Ling-Hua factory for the fixed stock. They would also do an underfolding stock version produced at the Min Shan factory. They would also be imported by Clayco. Now, this is my SILE import 156S1, but it's also a late Norinco, and I kind of thought it would be fun, and we have a video on this one. I thought it would be fun because in a way this was the last of the pre-band configured semi-AKs to come over during the 80s. In fact, these 156Ss were caught in customs, and this again was the very first. Now, we have a video looking at the whole history of Chinese AKs, and I did not have access to this rifle at that time, so I thought it was worth doing a separate little video because it's such a neat and interesting rifle. And it really, this was the second, I wouldn't say true AKM because it has some Chinese features, of course, but the second AK pattern rifle to really come in. First, of course, was the Steyr Mahdi ARM out of Egypt, which came in '82. The Claycos started to appear sometime in '83 and into early '84. Clayco itself was founded in September of 1982. Then they worked on importing these guns from Norinco in China. They've started to bring them over, and they started to appear on the market. You started to really see advertisements for them in 1984. For example, there's a very famous Soldier of Fortune article in September of '84 featuring these guns. They're interesting. As you notice, they have the Bakelite, which is actually a phenolic or fiberglass reinforced type furniture. You can see the seam on the stock. It's very similar material to what's on the Chinese SKS stocks, which, by the way, Clayco did import SKSs. We have a trap in the butt for a cleaning kit. Typical sling swivel. Very typical shaped stock. We have the AK Type 3 smooth dust cover, which was carried over to the Chinese 56 type guns. We have a 1.5, or as some people want to call it, a 1.6 millimeter stamped receiver. We have a very unique rivet pattern. The back is pretty standard, but the front, as you see, is pretty unique to Chinese guns. Have a more or less standard front trunnion with a barrel that's pressed and pinned into it. We have a medium heavy profile, so it's an AK Type 3 profile, 16¼ inch barrel. It's threaded 14 millimeter, and the Norinco guns almost always came with this compensator, the AKM style slant brake. It's the Polytex you find that usually have simply the nut. Likewise, we have the completely hooded enclosed front sight, and we have an AKM style bayonet lug under the gas block, as opposed to the AK Type 3 style Fang Type 1 that you find on most of the Polytex. We still have a ported gas tube, which is a carryover again. The sling swivel placement up here is a carryover from the AK Type 3, but again we have the AKM style rear swivel. No scope rail. Interestingly, we have quite a bit of markings on the side. This is a relatively early one in the 101 serial range. I do not know how many were imported, but I know there are serials going up to at least 109. I find this warning material on the dust cover interesting. This appeared on the early Claycos. Again, these are the first AKs. To me, it mirrors the warning you'll see on Uzis, on Model A and Model B Uzis, which came in starting in 1981. At that time, people were very concerned about illegal conversions of semi-autos because the semi-autos were just appearing on the market. No one really knew what the ATF would and wouldn't allow. Ever since 1968, there have been increasing restrictions. They had just passed a rule saying no open bolt semi-autos, so they weren't taking any chances. So they stamped a bunch of legal stuff on it. This would eventually disappear on later imports. Not on Claycos, but on later ones. Now the reason we have this fiberglass Bakelite furniture, when Clayco contracted with Norinco for these, they just sent over what was essentially at that time current military production guns. This is very close to a late production Type 56. And they had switched over to using more and more synthetic furniture in the 70s, and so by the 80s it was quite common. Now later Claycos would be offered with wood, but the early ones would be this material. It seems like the earliest ones tended to be black. Some people also call them green because it's kind of a black with a green undertone. It's just the type of Bakelite they used. And of course some would be more the red color as on this one. Also, the fixed stocked guns would have the bolt carrier left in the white. That's just from the Ling-Hua factory. The Min Shan factory guns, the underfolders, would have the bolt carriers and bolt grips blued. And these underfolders, and we'll throw up a picture, would almost always come with black Bakelite handguards and pistol grip to go with the stock. So they're kind of an all-black gun. I think a particularly cool-looking one is like that. So yeah, this was the first Chinese import into the USA. And for that, it has a lot of history behind it. And these are very well-done guns, very smooth bolts, nice double-hook triggers. Not match quality, but very good quality. Easy enough to manipulate safeties, not too loose, not too tight. Even, there's a little play in this upper gas tube, and you can see some lathe marks on the barrel here. But for a mass-produced Kalashnikov, these are very well put together with nice quality bluing. Now, some people claim that Golden State Arms was the first to bring in AKs. This is not true. The problem is there was the original Golden State Arms, who was made famous by the Santa Fe guns in the 60s. And then there was actually Golden State Arms distributors, which piggybacked off the name in the 80s. And the reason I say that they were not first, it's pretty clear. Clayco was already having guns like this on the market in 1984. 83 perhaps, but definitely by 84 these were commercially available. Golden State Arms Distributors was not even founded, was not even incorporated as a business until 1984. So it seems like at the earliest possibility they could have had guns maybe by the end of the year, probably not until 1985. But I think the confusion arises from the very, very similar names. And this information is from a letter of the former owner of the company, so it's verified. Golden State Arms Distributors was not the first. Clayco really does appear to be the first. There's no evidence to show that anyone was bringing these in numbers and selling them on the market before Clayco. So yeah, the first semi-auto Chinese Kalashnikov to appear in America. And of course it would open a tidal wave. China has said they sent over 1 million of these guns into the U.S. between 83 and 94, and Even though they're very collectible and desirable today, Chinese AKs are pretty still easy to find. There's always several on Gunbroker, and I don't mean they put a million Claycos over exactly, but I just mean total semi-auto guns, beginning with the Clayco, ending with the Mac 90. There's probably about a million here. It's a very large number because for a long time, these were the wassers of the day. Well, for more information, check out our full video on Chinese AKs and really even the history of the Type 56 military rifle. And if you'd like to know more about this gun that was caught in customs here, the 156S1, check out its own video. It is also, I think, as I said, a Norinco, so it's very similar to what the Claycos would have looked like, except they would have had the synthetic furniture and they would have had an intact bayonet lug. Otherwise, very similar. It's just still built on a 1.5 mil receiver as well. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. If you'd like to share your own stories about your Chinese guns, we'd really welcome them. It's always nice to hear about people who bought them and their experiences over the years and how they've held up and things like that. If you liked the video, please click like. And as always, if you haven't subscribed and could do so, we'd really appreciate it. This is Min Shan, and we'll catch you next time.